Prison cities?
Well,
Why do we call them prison cities? Just because they're like prison cities, really?
Change them. I have some words of my own about things. For instance, a word that I created a long time ago is called demo-republicanism.
Well, it's okay to create words because, you know, everyone's doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey folks, Jake Oakes here, Liberty Empowered Media. With me tonight is David Els. We're going to be giving you a sneak peek of a show we have coming up here with Jessica Bianco from the Kimber Academy and Chelsea Hope, who's got some really important information, both of them, that we're really excited about. So let's start with you, Chelsea. I asked you to come on because you've been doing some really important research about things happening right here in our backyard.
yeah, we've got I think Utah's waking up finally, hopefully, to the smart city, 15-minute city. But we do have the World Economic Forum actually has on their own website now that the point, the name of the 15-minute city here in Utah, they want that to be used as a model for the 15-minute cities, or the prison cities, as you've called them, across the U.S. So I do have a video actually that I'd like to play. It's basically the smart city. It shows what they're doing in China, how they're tracking China's citizens, their smart city there, and their ESG social credit score system. So I'd like to play that video first.
They're constantly monitored by facial recognition cameras that are able to instantly put a face to a name. Now, the Chinese are also ranked, given a mark out of a possible 950 points. A score in the 700s is considered good. Around the 500 mark is not. For now, the number is a sort of bank credit rating, keeping track of everyone's spending habits.
I think being ranked is a good thing. A society has to have rules.
It forces us to be well behaved.
It may seem scary, but it's just like that here. We're used to it, and anyway, we don't have a choice.
But in an effort to keep all of its subjects in line, Beijing is taking the system a step further in 2020. It's aggregating data gathered by banks, private companies, and the state to rate if someone's a good or bad citizen.
By using the most data possible, the so-called big data, the system will play an important role in rebuilding a moral society.
The state will go over every detail of a person's life with a fine-tooth comb. Their financial situation, spending habits, career, even behavior on social media. Criticizing the government online or displaying outward signs of wealth is a no-no. On the other hand, praising the party or giving blood increases your social credit. Xiao Wen Wang is a model citizen. She lives in Nanjing, a testing ground for social ranking. Married with a child, she has a job in a retirement home, no debts, and she wouldn't dream of jaywalking.
As a good citizen, I respect the rules of the road. If I didn't, I'd lose points on my social credit.
In theory, everything can be taken into account in the social score, even the most innocuous errands like supermarket shopping. When Xiao Wen Wang makes an electronic payment, her purchases tell the state a lot about her. Buying cigarettes would count against her. On the other hand, nappies show she's an attentive mother. Beer could indicate alcoholism. She'd be better off buying water. In this pilot city of 8 million people, there are only 18,000 model citizens. For Xiao Wen Wang, there are perks to be had, such as paying half price for the bus.
I get discounts for all public services, even at museums. And the library is free for me, thanks to my score.
A good score brings benefits, but people with low scores lose rights. The cinema names and shames people considered untrustworthy, plastering their details, even their addresses, across big screens.
It's a matter of principle. Those people have to be condemned.
Those people aren't honest, so they have to pay the price.
It's only right to pay your debts. You have to blacklist those that don't.
The Supreme Court has created a blacklist for so-called bad citizens. those whose ratings have dropped to 0. On it are companies, but also 23 million people to date. Among them is this journalist Liu Hu. He got a little too close to uncovering corruption among high-profile party members. After being sued for defamation by the subject of a story he'd written, he was blacklisted. But he only realized when he tried to buy a train ticket and was told he was banned from traveling.
That tells me I'm still on the blacklist.
Punished because he's been branded untrustworthy by the state.
Once you're blacklisted, you can no longer get a bank loan, start a business, buy an apartment, or even send your children to a private school.
Liu Hu is among a tiny minority of people who have dared to criticize the system, which some are calling a digital dictatorship.
I worry, because I think many people like me will be deprived of individual freedoms, and all of us will live with restrictions of one kind or another.
After our meeting, Liu Hu learned that his name had been removed from the blacklist, but he still has a long way to go if he doesn't want to languish at the bottom of the social credit hierarchy.
What in that stood out?
So when you watch the video, obviously we've got everything is digital, right? They've got their homes. We know that during COVID they had drones flying around telling them to stay in their homes, tracking them. They're not able to scan on to the transit system to travel or to leave if their social credit score isn't high enough. Just the tracking of the citizens and that communist oppression in general, right? And they're doing that through digital means, and I think that that's the important thing that people need to realize with the, this Build Back Better, this green agenda. Really, it's to digitalize everything. It's to electrify everything, because when everything is electric, everything is controlled. And we do have that here in Utah. We've now passed the digital ID with the QR codes on the mobile phones through the Utah Citizen Portal. HB 470 was passed. So what you're seeing in China, they have brought here to Utah. We are electrifying our entire roadways and systems. They've brought through Aspire, they've brought Stadler here. When you look at Stadler, it is all either former or current Swiss Parliament members. So Switzerland basically is going to own our transportation system.
So for somebody that would come and say, what's wrong with updating or innovating our infrastructure? What's the harm in getting with the times and this digital stuff? For those that just aren't caring enough, why should they care? How's it going to impact them? Yeah. You mentioned a little bit with, that video demonstrates that there's this social score and you're going to be able to be restricted from certain activities if the state feels like you're not meeting what they want.
Right, and I mean, technology is an amazing thing, right? A lot of these things can be used for good, and a lot of the things coming down the line are really cool. People want to jump on board. The problem happens when government has been corrupted. And we have like we see China with the Communist Party, right? These dictators that are controlling it. And the problem here with Utah is these public-private partnerships where we've got corporations and government and stakeholders working together who have financial conflicts of interest and gain here. We've got legislators who are developers who are building the smart homes that are connected to all of this, and the Internet of Things, which connects everything together.
Imagine that conflict of interest in the legislature.
Interest,
There's
yeah.
no such. That doesn't go
Imagine that.
No.
But yes, they are going to implement the social credit score. And the problem with Utah and our public-private partnerships is we are partnered with the United Nations and the World Economic Forum. They have them right here in our backyard. And Noah Harari, Klaus Schwab, these people have talked about digital dictatorships. They've talked about how they've, Stalin and Hitler, they've never been able to do it before, but they didn't have the technology and the digital means that we have now. And they talk about how that now will be possible, and they are going themselves to play God, basically. And these are the people that we've partnered with, that our legislators, that our governor has partnered with in Utah. So these are the people, Swiss Parliament, the Communist Party in China has infiltrated our capital. These are the people that will be running these smart cities. the problem with the 15-minute city. Everything that you need is within a 15-minute walking radius. They are trying to eliminate cars completely here, yes, in Utah. We're not going to be able to travel independently. And what have we seen throughout history, right? Where you cut off travel to the people, where we can't organize. They have come out in Oxfordshire. They're only allowed to leave their city. I think it's 100, they have 100-day passes. Oxfordshire is, or Oxford is 100. Oxfordshire, 25 days out of the year, they're allowed to leave their city boundaries. They have announced, they've announced in 2024 they will start doing climate lockdowns for carbon emissions. They're going to start locking us into our cities, and we're aiming to. We're very quickly approaching that, and our legislators are pushing for that here as well.
That is some really important information, and you've done a lot of research to break down, exposing some very specific things, where it's coming from, how it's creeping in, that we'll get into in the full show that we're looking forward to. Thank you for your time, Chelsea.
Absolutely.
Just a quick note, you mentioned playing God. One of our founders, John Jay, actually talked about arbitrary government, and he said that anybody that seeks to act as though they have unlimited power, only God has unlimited power. And any attempt to try to rule people as though there's limitless power is to try to usurp God.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so we have to remember that there's a hierarchy of authority, and government derives its authority from the people, and the people can only have a prosperous and liberty, joyful life when they follow God's laws.
Yes.
That kind of ties in with some ideas that drive Kimber Academy.
Yes. So it's Kimber Academy, but really these are not even ideas. These are eternal, true principles that we are just ceasing to use in society right now. We still see homes, trying to live these principles, but our societies have abandoned the true principles of governance, and this is what we're seeing, and it's all happened through education, really. And that's what we do at Kimber, is we try to restore education to what it's supposed to be. Over 100 years ago, we started to implement schools as we know today. So what we think traditional schooling is right now is not really what traditional schooling was 100 years ago. The schooling that the founders that educated people for thousands of years is not what we're doing today. And this wasn't, when it started, it was an experimental delivery of education. And now it's become mainstream. There wasn't even any data when they first started to put our children in these schools and separate them by ages and grades and remove the child as early as possible from the home. In reality, children didn't even start school until they knew how to read and write. They were proficient in that until mom would send their child to school.
So mom and dad were much more involved in teaching some of those basic skills.
Yeah, and usually the basic skills were, mostly, I'm talking probably 99% of the time, were taught by using the Bible. Like, that's how those skills were taught. So the child, once they were 6, 7 years old and went to school, they had a very good vocabulary. They understood all these words. They knew what things meant. So it was they knew how to ask questions, what these things mean, and they weren't afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
I mean, at least I remember going to public school. I was afraid to look stupid, and I was afraid to ask questions to people or to teachers. But in the home, the child loses that fear because they know they're going to get the right answer, and they can trust that answer is true. So then we send our kids to school now, and we say, hey, do everything your teacher says, do all your homework and all of these things. And then the child does. They come home, they bring that homework. We even help them to do that homework now. And this is not how things were when children went to school. It was, and we separate them. The biggest thing about education we need to understand is is not even the curriculum. The curriculum, once you open those books and you see those horrible things that you're seeing right now in the curriculum, you know this is wrong. Yeah. You know it's wrong. It's not even masked anymore. But the real thing is how they're delivering. I like to say the delivery system of the education has completely changed, which has now, it's no longer, we're not educating. It's an indoctrination system. It's not a system that educates people to be free thinkers, to create, it actually was developed to create maybe 3% that would become leaders in the world, and that 3% would be trained in the leadership that whoever is creating the education wants them to be. 17% would naturally drop out. These are all things that have been researched. The father of education that most educators know now, John Dewey, created this system purposely for 17% to automatically drop out of education, okay? 3% would become leaders and everybody else would just follow the system. That's what it was created for. And so to create the workers for or if they say that we have to all go to college, that's what everyone's going to do, is going to go to college. And if we want, a certain trade to die out, then we just won't emphasize that trade anymore, and it just dies out, and everybody,
right.
Or all you have to do really is create the generation gap, the generational gap that they started talking about in the 60s, where parents don't understand their kids. Teachers would tell the middle schoolers, the high schoolers, well, it's because there's a generation gap and your parents don't really know what you guys are going through right now. That's absurd. Parents were teenagers once too. They understand what it's like to be a teenager.
Yeah.
So,
David, you used to be an educator.
I was an official high school English teacher, but I grew up in theater and drama, and so I morphed my situation in schools where I was able to do in class. I had extra credit situations. I had advertisements, and I would call on the numbers, and there would be 2 or 3 students assigned to the committee, and I would say, okay, we're doing Carrie's home program and stuff, and they would stand up and present it was like 1 to 3 minutes, and they would present a little program. I did this in southern Utah with a small town, which was very different, and then I did it in Northern California, and then I did it in Southern California, at the 3 places where I was teaching. And the kids loved it, and of course I always gave them extra credit points for doing this. It was really a kick for that. And then I would get students that wanted to be in a play, and we would either partially write the play and do really basic acting and directing things, and we would have to make things stuff. And I was doing this extremely low budget, so there was no real costuming, and there was no real sets. There was no whole lot of stuff.
Required a lot more kind of innovation to. And
that's the whole thing.
To pull things
that was
off.
The way it is.
So it sounds like you were involving them a lot more in decisions and in creation.
It was. The point is, education changed, and the manner for me to do that, and the union got after me, and a number of things got after me, and I basically had to walk away because they weren't going to allow me to do any of it anymore. I wasn't allowed, especially when I was writing some of my own little advertisements and little things for plays and things. Oh boy, they did not like that. It got very, very, very controlled. Where then I learned that if I, as a teacher, instead of teaching, become a trainer, then like Pavlov's dogs, the students become dogs. And I really had a hard time with all these changes with the education system. And what's being done at Kimber Academy is really pretty impressive, because the students are taught to ask questions. And questioning is the beginning of real education. It's real simple.
And what's important is not giving them the answer completely. Like you say, okay, that's interesting. How do we find that answer? Teaching them how to find answers for themselves too. A lot of times, us at Kimber Academy, what we do is we're students first. The teachers are just as much students as the students are. Correct. And so you don't have to be an expert on any subject.
No.
You do have to, however, know how to ask questions and how to get information. So that's what we focus on a lot. And I think that parents at home, if they're watching, this is one of the biggest things. Help your child learn where to go after information that they can trust, credible sources, and ultimately the spirit, right? Because that's what we go to. The rest is this. We have to focus on the spirit. And without that, education is void.
Yeah.
So.
Can I, really quick, I love that because one of the things that I've seen up at the legislature, which we're fighting, is the digital systems that they're bringing into the schools. And they're teaching kids now to be, I mean, they've brought so much politics into it, but they're teaching kids to be their own fact checkers now. There's all sorts of documents that are guiding them to who to believe and who not. So it's so important to get back to independent thought. So I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for your time. We're looking forward to the full episode where we could dive in deeper.
Yeah.
Liberty Empowered Media is going to deliver empowerment. That was the main focus of this rebranding. If you've been following the journey, we had this show established before with Lloyd Brunson, who I have to credit getting me excited about the Constitution. I've been involved politically, but coming back to the Constitution as the focus. And then there were some others along the way, and in my own study, I found that the reason so much of my brand is focused on the word liberty is because freedom is just your God-given gift of being a free agent. Just by being a free agent doesn't necessarily mean that you are prosperous or empowered. You must use that gift God's given you as a free agent to pursue eternal laws and principles that would further empower you. And that is where you achieve liberty. It's an empowerment. And we want to empower you. On this show, we're going to have a unique catering where we'll bring people in, discuss current events, current issues, and certain ideas, principles. We're going to tie in the things that are happening right here in Utah with current events and tie it back to constitutional fundamental principles and help you see the relevance of why it's important to understand these principles. We look forward to you joining us in this journey, and make sure you're stay tuned with us with Liberty United and this specific podcast with Liberty United, the Liberty Empowered Media. Thank you.